Well, here's one of the most important parts of this whole training, recording audio. Finally, you've gotten here.
And here are some of the most popular audio recording software suites that we use and that many voice professionals use. We've got Adobe Audition, we have Audacity, which is actually a free open source program, and we have Magic's SoundForge.
All three of these are very good professional audio recording software packages. Now, we use in-house Audition and we use SoundForge. Audacity is okay. For a free product, it's amazingly good. It does almost everything you'd want it to do. Just not one of my favorites because I like the support. I don't like the interface as much, but that's just me. A lot of people use Audacity and you can't beat the price. It is free. It is a multi-track recorder when you're looking at it, so it may confuse some people a little bit more. You don't have to get confused. We'll talk about things like that later. But Audacity for the price is free, and just know that it runs on PCs, and I think it runs on Mac too, if I'm not wrong.
I believe it's Mac or at least PC and Linux.
Oh, okay, interesting. Audition is an Adobe product. It's part of the Creative Cloud. And I believe you can get it separately, but you can also get it as part of the cloud, whichever cloud you have. And it is a great recording package. It's my favorite one for adding effects and other things. It's got a good interface. It's a nice tool to work with. It has also good integration with video packages like Adobe Premiere, which is nice. Then, of course, you've got one of the oldest ones out here, and that is SoundForge. SoundForge, developed by Magix now, or acquired by Magix, was originally developed by Sonic Foundry, and then it was sold to Sony. Sony did a real good job with it. Sony then sold it to Magix. SoundForge has been around a very long time and does a very good job with markers and also with effects and editing. It's a very easy audio editor. Not bad at all. We use it a lot for our voiceover editing when we're doing large e-learning courses because of the way it does markers. It just does a really good job. We tend to use Adobe Audition more for inserting effects and doing all of our pre-processing, which we'll talk about soon.
And next we're going to go over some of the basic terminology relating to recording that's going to come up a lot here. The first is just waveforms. And waveforms are just the visual representation of the change in pressure that over a certain frequency that causes audio to happen.
That means you've got a lot of hot air. When that hot air comes out, it causes a wave to happen on a microphone. It's pretty cool. It works well.
And we have an example of a stereo wave, which has a left and right channel, and we've got a monaural wave, and we've got a music wave, which, as you can see, is a little more varied looking because it's got multiple different kinds of sound combined.
Yeah, and as you get used to working with wave files or wave forms, it's amazing how quickly you'll actually be able to recognize words or phrases that people are using because you'll see the pattern that doesn't change. When you hear a breath, for example, somebody goes, you'll see maybe a little round thing or a kind of an oblong thing and say, oh, that's a breath. You can then select that and find every occurrence of that breath, and usually they're very similar, and then delete them all at once. Really cool kind of features.
The next term is clipping, and as you can see with the waveform here, that's when the sound going into the microphone is louder than the loudest sound that whatever is receiving the sound can receive.
Now, I'm going to get real close to this. Now, take your headsets off or get away from the speakers. I'm going to talk loudly into this. So this is normal. Hi! So what that did is that created a clip. I went way too high. Now, with the Aphex that I have on this thing, the Aphex vocal processor, it probably dimmed that clip a little bit, but there's a good chance it clipped. So when you scream into a mic or you say something very loud, you're going to get clipping. And clipping, unfortunately, can be undone a little bit, but not that much. You're still going to have that bit. Even if you lower the volume, you'll hear something that sounds like, hi, and it'll still stop at the top flat because you're not letting the wave file clip all the way to the top. So once you have clipped audio, you've got bad audio. Many times you have to just redo it.
And the next term is levels, and that's just how loud your audio is. And we have a representation of a levels meter here, which shows in decibels ranging from 0 to, in this case, it's only going down to -21, but it's just a partial meter here. And usually it looks like this when you see the levels go up and down. You'll have a green area, a yellow area, and a red area. And the middle area, the yellow area, is where you usually want your sound to be around. That's around -6 decibels.
And every so often you might get into the red, but it's not a problem. You're just barely touching it usually. And that can happen because a wavefile may just be a little bit louder in one peak than another one. More often than not, that won't be an issue. If it's constantly up in the red, you're going to have the clipping issue and it may not work well. You may have to re-record. Keep an eye on those meters because as you're recording, their color or their height or length will tell you where you are as far as your sound quality goes. Now, some people like to record with headphones on. I don't. To me, it bothers me. I'm looking more at the meters and I can tell if I'm loud or not based on the meters. Depends on the kind of headphone you have. It can mute your sound to your own ears, so you may sound funny. So it's up to you. Some people love it, some people don't.
And a noise floor, or rather your noise floor, is the levels in decibels of your background noise. Pictured here, we have a noise floor of about -40, which is about as high as your noise floor should get.
And that's pretty high. You really want it more in the 50s, even 60s, because that means you've got a fairly noisy room. We're trying to keep the room quiet. That would make a big difference.
And here we're going to show you a video of where we will detail how to create a new file in Adobe Audition. Before we do anything in Adobe Audition, we're going to need a file. Go into File, New Audio File. As you can see, there's a keyboard shortcut here. You can also simply use Shift Space to get this same result. Name your recording file, and now you can set your sample rate to 44,100 Hz. Another common default value is 48,000 Hz. This is commonly used on Apple and Mac systems. We're going to set it to 44,100 for now, though. Leave it at mono on the channels, as your microphone probably only records in mono. Set the bit depth to 16 bits. You can also choose 24 bits if you want higher quality. Now, press OK to create your file. That was how to create a new file, and our next segment is on creating a single or a multi-track audio file. Adobe Audition allows you to create two different types of audio file. You can create a multi-track session, or you can create a single track file. As you can see here, the single track file is simply listed as audio file in the new file dialog. We're going to choose that, name our file, create the file, and now to start recording you just press Shift Space. Audition is a popular sound editing tool for voice recording. Space again stops the recording, and you can press space to play your recording back. Audition is a popular sound editing tool for voice recording. The volume of your voice clip will vary. However, by the end, you want your peaks to be around -3 decibels and the majority of your voice around -6. I'll go into amplification in a later section. When you get voice clips from other people, such as voiceover artists and voice talent, you will probably get it with peaks of around -9 to -12. This is so that you can bring it up to where you need to later. So now that we have our audio recording, we're going to save the file. File save as. We're going to save it as a wave with these settings. And if you want to bring your audio file into a multi-track session, just right-click on the background here and select Insert into Multi-Track. However, we're going to stick to single track for now, since that will be most relevant to our voice recording tutorial. Multi-track is used for music and for audio imaging, where voice elements, music elements are used alongside sound effects. And that demonstrated in Audition some of the stuff we talked about earlier in the section. Next, we've got your basic editing techniques. We are going to learn some basic editing actions for Adobe Audition. Go to File, Open. We're going to open our file now. As you can see, the keyboard shortcut is Control-O. Here is our file. First, we're going to delete some off the beginning here. If we want to undo that, you can press Ctrl-Z. If you want to redo what we just undid, you can press Ctrl-Shift-Z. However, we're going to undo that for now, as you don't actually want to trim voiceover clips this closely. Depending on what program you're adding it into, well, many programs and most programs will have trouble playing back clips that are trimmed too closely. If I were to trim it like this, then the beginning would most likely get cut off when played back in our actual course made in an authoring tool. So we're going to undo that, and what we're going to do is leave half a second of audio before our actual voiceover clip, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to silence it. Right click, silence. There's also a way to get a shortcut to do that. I'll show you later. And we're going to do it a different way here. At the end, I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to go to Edit, Insert, Silence, and add half a second of silence. Now we're going to undo both of those, and I'm going to show you how to do that with a keyboard shortcut. Go into your keyboard shortcut, search box, type in silence, and you'll see that by default there aren't keyboard shortcuts for these actions that I just did. You can use any key combination you like, but I'm going to set Q to silence. And I will set for insert silence, I'll use Alt-S. And let's try that out. So if I select this half second at the beginning here, I press Q and it's silent. And if I delete this at the end here, I press Alt-S, and then I've already got the half second that I did last time, so I'll just insert that, and you've got half a second of silence at the end. Something that's useful while editing that you may want to do is turning on playback loop. I have it on already, but you can toggle it using Control-L or this little button at the bottom here. This means when you play the clip, Audition is a popular sound editing tool for voice recording. Audition is it automatically repeats until you stop it. After this, our next segment covers markers, which, as we mentioned earlier, differ a bit between different audio editing suites, but we're showing you Audition here, and it's not too different from a lot of other programs. You're going to learn how to add markers to an audio file in Adobe Audition. Markers are useful for exporting smaller subclips out of a longer voiceover audio file. First thing we're going to do is open up our file. Go over to File or just press Ctrl-O, and we're going to open our file here. The next thing we want to do is make sure our markers panel is showing. If you don't see markers here, you can go to Windows and make sure it's checked. If you just have your playhead at a certain point on the timeline and you press M on your keyboard, it will add a marker. You'll notice that it has a duration of 0 seconds. you'll have to select a region if you want it to actually mark a region of time. So we're going to undo that marker, and let's listen to our audio to find out where we need to mark.
LO1 PO1. Congratulations, you've taken a step to make your life and health better. In our course on Chinese breathing techniques for health, we will cover the following: proper breathing techniques, variations of proper breathing, what to expect from these techniques, how to set up a schedule to do them on a consistent and habitual way. Click Next to continue. LO1 PO2.
So let's zoom in a little bit here. And the section that we want to select will just be right before, it'll be ending right before that LO1 PO2 bit. Let's make sure this is where we want to be.
LO1 PO2.
And we're going to select this, and then we'll press M. As you can see, we've got our marker with a duration of 32.8 seconds. Next, we're going to want to rename our marker to LO1 PO1 so it's more useful and we'll be able to know what it's supposed to be called when we actually export it. Click on it again, and then we'll name it LO1 PO1. I will mark the rest of these and then I'll show you how to export these in a batch. Now that I have all of these regions marked, I'm just going to save the file. You can use Control S or just go into the file menu here. And when you save a single track file like a wave that we have here, then it'll be saved into the file's metadata, so if you open up that wave file later on, you'll still have all these markers. Now we're going to export these marked regions. Select all of them, click on this button, and we're just going to use the marker names in the file names here and export them to wave at 44,100 Hertz sample rate, 16-bit bit depth, and mono. You can also add a prefix or a postfix to audio files. The postfix can increment itself based on how many you export. For example, if I added a postfix of 000, then the first one would be 000, the next one would be 001, and so on. However, I'm not going to do that here, as it doesn't tend to work with our numbering system, and it always has this underscore here. I'll just export these here, and we can see in our folder here we have the exported files. They are the WAV files. The PKF files are something that Adobe Audition creates. It's just the rendered waveform, so it doesn't have to render out the waveform every time you open it. When you're exporting files for e-learning or most other applications, try to export them to the highest quality you can. Exporting them to WAV, for example. These short clips are best rendered out to WAV, as MP3s, especially at short lengths, can cause delays or timing issues on playback within your authoring program or any other kind of program you're using them in. And in the last demo for this chapter, we're going to cover briefly Adobe Audition's import and export functions. Importing a file in Adobe Audition adds it to your Files pane here. For single track recording and editing, which we're using for this tutorial, open and import are functionally identical. So we're going to go into File, Import, File, or Control I is the shortcut. And here's our file. It is in here now, it's opened it up automatically. And we're just going to do a slight amount of editing here, and we will export our file. So go to File, Export, File, and again, the function is about the same as Save As when it comes to a single track recording. You have your file name, your location, and your format. We're just going to leave it to WAV because MP3s or other compressed formats can sometimes cause problems when you have a really short duration for your clip, especially in e-learning authoring tools. And with that, you should have a basic understanding of the essentials of digital audio recording.
And as Harold said in those great demos, all the software is very similar. They may take slightly different approaches to editing video or recording audio or editing audio, but they're in essence very, very similar. And the nice thing is you learn one, you'll pretty much be close to learning all of them with just minor tweaks. There are a lot of effects, and we're going to cover those later on, and things that you can do to make your sound more exciting, interesting, different. We'll cover some of that in the near future and the next lesson.
Yeah, the
For
next
now,
lesson, post-processing, is where you'll learn about all of those things.
Fun stuff. Here we go.